Welcome to MoobTube. We are going to do a little quick fire review of a film that's coming out very soon in the UK.
Bish bash bosh.
One Fine Morning by Hansen-Love. This is a film starring Lea Seydoux and Melvil Poupaud. Lea Seydoux plays the daughter of a man with dementia.
No, he doesn't. He has a rare neurological disorder.
Rare neurological disorder that has similar symptoms.
Expressions.
Failure to kind of remember important things that help him live his life. And a kind of general cognitive decline. Lea Seydoux's character is a widow. She has a daughter, but no, the father has died. And she's more or less given up on a prospect of a romantic life until an old friend played by Melvil Poupaud appears in her life, and he's a married man, and so this is, in true French style, an affair
of the heart.
Exactly. But
that's of the body, actually, isn't it? It's cœur.
The cœur, the core and cœur and all that. So there's two parallel narratives happening. There's the cognitive decline of the elder figure in her life, and this new, unexpected romance with a man she is very besotted with.
It's actually Pascal Gregory playing the father.
Yes,
and it's an amazing
who is in Poupaud
by Eric Rohmer. So there's a thing about in the water at the moment about films about Alzheimer's and dementia. I think because, I mean, not least like Gaspar Noé, but the father, Anthony Hopkins, Gaspar Noé's Vortex and so on. There's a lot of narratives that are kind of, I guess, using it as a vector for exploring kind of intergenerational dependencies, obligations, love.
I think very frankly, it's family. In the West, it's happening a lot.
It's just happening everywhere.
Most of the filmmakers, I think, doing these stories are drawing on personal experience.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's actually even a narrative that Philippe Garrel with the chariot in his latest film kind of draws on it kind of obliquely anyway. But yeah, so Pascal Gregory plays the father, and I think it's, for me, like it's an incredibly measured, restrained, very beautiful, really, really moving film. But Pascal Gregory's performance just really stood out for me in a way that the role could appear kind of frightening, and it is kind of frightening to see his decline, but it doesn't dehumanize him in a way that maybe Dario Argento's character in Vortex is really like, because that is such a relentlessly bleak film. The sufferers really are, the characters that the parents in that are really like, I guess, like distanced and alienated. In this, Pascal Gregory retains enough of himself, I suppose, that these flashes of his personality and character kind of come through. And it's such a nuanced performance of a thing that, in less capable acting hands might be done, might be fumbled in a way.
Yeah, it feels like very carefully the parameters of what he can and can't remember or capture or access have been defined really well, and so you feel, in a strange way, not safe hand, like it's very troubling to watch, but you feel like it does read very, very distinctively. It's not like I think some of the other, like Amour or whatever, or Francis Lebrun in Vortex, the decline is depicted in a more kind of
or Anthony Hopkins,
more bluntly chaotic,
really
everything just falling apart way. Whereas here, it's deeply distressing, almost because there's still like a huge kindness in his eyes and a sort of the view of reality slipping is seen more from his eyes than perhaps it always is in these films. Lea, also aided massively by Lea Seydoux, who really is. And this is totally typical for me, Hansen-Love. She is really as a protagonist, she is the viewer's eyes and ears. She's in pretty much every frame, and we are invited to sympathise with her view of things. I think that one thing that I found really bold was this juxtaposition. That's why I highlighted at the top of the show the juxtaposition of what comes to a head with both of these narratives, and the way they interact in the conversations that these very frank, fresh conversations she's having with this new lover, where she says at one point to Melvil Poupaud's character, if this happens, if we stay together and this happens to me, just take me. I know right now that it will be better if you just help me die.
Help me, euthanize me, basically.
Rather than have to go through this, and I want you to, I will do this for you, and I want you to do this for me.
It's a kind of film in that sense where she is a character who has little boundaries drawn up, and yet is obviously on the verge of not a breakthrough so much as she's someone who's negotiating quite hard boundaries in her life. She has a young daughter. She's got a lot to protect. She's suffered not only grief with the father of her child dying, but grief with her dad kind of declining in front of her. So she has a very good reason to have drawn up quite precise boundaries around her defenses, and then obviously love can dismantle those things. And so it's really seeing someone kind of negotiating their own relationship with the own borders of their own selfhood.
Indeed,
which is why it's so compelling.
And I just want to draw this connection between and it's not made too heavy-handedly, but you have alongside this the spectre of euthanasia, a thing that doesn't happen in the film but is talked about. You have the spectre of a man in a relationship he is clearly not wholly satisfied with, but cannot make the decision to end for the sake of someone he has seemingly more significant and real feeling for.
He's kind of negotiating his own
this necessary but harsh sacrifice that a human is unable to make, both in love and in death, is juxtaposed beautifully in this conversation, because she has every right to protest, that she is being treated like the other woman, even though she knows she is the most important woman in the moment. But in the general kind of balance of how humane one can afford to be, or how harsh one can afford to be, or allow oneself to be, things seem slightly different.
It's really watching people making compromises at the edges of themselves, and I think
exactly
obviously there with Mia Hansen-Love there are always parallels to be drawn with Eric Rohmer. And the thing about Eric Rohmer is that you are seeing characters who probably don't know what they really want, kind of bounce around each other like atoms in a super collider. And that's what's interesting about Rohmer, because the audience often knows maybe a little bit more about the total situation. And if the inverse, maybe with Mia Hansen-Love, even though it's really similar to Rohmer situationally, is that you don't really know the total situation in the same way, and it's a lot more subtle.
He works more with dramatic irony, doesn't he?
Yeah. So for Rohmer, there'll be character A who has love interest B, and you'll see both sides of it, and relies on kind of much more kind of almost conventional narrative beats, but he's very good at that. Whereas this is much more ambient as filmmaking, and it's this constant shifting and negotiation whilst people are trying to create a space of self-realization and happiness, which is something that you saw in Goodbye First Love or things like that. So you're seeing people try and figure stuff out, and you're in at the ground floor with it in a way that with Rohmer you're not. You're floating over it. You're Rohmer himself floating over these characters, not in a condescending way, definitely not with Rohmer. It's really sympathetic and humane, but there is a slight difference of perspective, and here you are with Lea Seydoux the whole time. Whereas, with Rohmer, you're treating everyone you're a little bit of everyone in a Rohmer film. Whereas here, you're very much Lea Seydoux.
Yeah, you're right amongst it.
Yeah. I think that was so, and it's done in such a restrained way. Like it's shot in a really restrained way. There's like, I've read of the pod, James King talking about like there's almost an absence of style with Mia Hansen-Love, which throws into relief actually what she is doing with style, which is so restrained, and it's a little bit lingering.
Yeah, she manages to achieve a highly distinctive style through not a huge departure from the normal naturalistic style of filmmaking that is basically de rigueur for art house productions.
Yeah.
But she does something. There's something about the blocking, something about the way she lingers on things, the cuts.
Yeah.
It's pretty subtle. There's also these track and pan shots, the way she moves through the city.
To track someone walking
exactly
through the street or walking through
to sort of someone comes through and then
like
watch and then move, and there's these rhythms. You know, they're not. It's not like watching Zhovsky or something. No, much as I love. Expression.
Well, there's a really good example. We just watched a scene where Lea Seydoux and her sister are going in to meet a doctor to talk, get an update on her father's condition. And there's a great moment where you see them crossing into the room while the doctor's moving across the room to close the door behind them and then sit down. And the blocking is actually really complicated, of this flowing, these two flows of people moving through this space. And it's so, you don't notice it unless you're thinking about it in a way, but there's really complex blocking going on with me, Hansen-Love. And again, it's so subtle and so restrained that you don't really know where it's happening, but it adds a real, again, sense of thickness to her films and a kind of, just a real naturalism and easiness to them that is very lifelike.
And this is, I think, quite Rohmer in a way that... I mean, there are so many ways in which I thought about Rohmer, and yet One Fine Morning doesn't seem like in any way it's a Rohmer copy at all.
No.
But there are several key moments of interaction with Rohmer. One of them is, of course, the fact that two of the actors play very memorable roles in Rohmer films. Pascal Gregory as Paul. What's his called? Is he called Paul? No, he's called Pierre. He's called Pierre
in
Berlinale Plage. Yeah. And then Melvil Poupaud plays the main male role in Summer's Tale. I mean, he's had an amazing career because he was in City of Pirates by Raoul Ruiz, and then he was also in she played a trans woman in Lawrence Anyways by Xavier Dolan. Weirdly,
same career. So there's
but also the color, the way that she does production design. The way that everything's slightly in its right place, but slightly off as well. It feels very.
It's not overly composed.
Exactly. It feels it feels like you've just walked into someone's house, and yet things have been changed to make sure that it's just right.
Well, even there with Lea Seydoux leaning against this kind of off-white wall and this kind of cream top, and it's slightly off-centered, and now she sits down and she's opposite her lover in a kind of green stripy top, and there's things like that seem really considered. And it does seem a bit, very Tale of Spring, Tale of Summer with Rohmer, like the way little things like the shirts people are wearing and how it might relate to a bowl of fruit, or the books that are behind them. There's a real cleverness about using production design to distinguish characters and give them weight and personality, and to convey their personality through changes of clothing. Like, Lea Seydoux's character becomes kind of synonymous with these stripy tops. Yeah. She wears a lot in it, and it says so much about her and how that stripy top kind of contrasts with the surroundings. And then when maybe you see her naked, and that's going from this very boyish kind of stripy top, tomboy kind of look to this real, obviously ravishing beauty. This isn't like a simp podcast, but I mean, come on. There's
fair play to
her. There's a really clever use of color. And it pops in a way that, like, maybe you're not used to with, like, a lot of prestige art house filmmaking. It really pops. Yeah,
the colors pop out. If someone wears a red top or some lipstick or something, she just always makes sure that things don't. Even when she's doing outdoor shots where you would imagine she has very little control over the scenario, there manages to be a balance of color. And this is consistent. I don't know if she always works with the same DOP or the same production designer. Yeah. She does. Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe.
Well, she's consistently worked with the same. God, what's his name? I can't remember the DOP's name, but his name is Denis Lenoir.
But all the way,
worked with for ages. Basically.
All the way from All Is Forgiven. Actually, maybe less with Eden, which is quite more of a messy film.
Yeah.
But a very good film. But
good. Goodbye First Love, whatever.
Goodbye First Love, exactly. I should say there's one Hansen-Love film I haven't seen called Maya, which people don't tend to like. Bergman Island is her most recent film, which I was pretty critical of. I thought it was a bit of at the time it felt a bit like an overstep of her hand, but actually I just thought it was maybe, now looking at this film, I feel like Bergman Island was just over confessional, over indulgent, didn't kind of didn't really realize it's I just think, going back to the Rohmer thing, this film, One Fine Morning, which is I think probably her best film, demonstrates a filmmaker finally, and I say finally, but most filmmakers never reach this stage in their career. This is like extraordinary for someone,
because it seems so effortless.
She's managed to find a style and a voice, and I really confidently feel that she could make films as good as this many times over.
Look at this again. This thing, like here's the use of dark and green and red again. You know, her lover was wearing a green top. She was wearing a green top. Now she's with her father. He's wearing a green top. She's wearing a red top. Just these subtle color balances or off balances, which are like so thoughtful in a way that you're just not accustomed to. And when you look at someone who over determines composition to a point of dysfunction, something like Angela Shanaluk's latest film Music, where characters, so much attention has been paid to balance, composition, figuration, embodiment, that the film becomes completely mannequin like, becomes like a shop display or a kind of e-commerce fashion brand advert. Here's a film that manages to be completely naturalistic but also super composed. That's something that like no one is really doing. And it is interesting that obviously Mia Hansen-Love was originally an actor, has kind of risen through the ranks. Not to like denigrate acting, but she's moved from acting to
true, and that it makes sense that they're quite actor. I mean, they're
actory films.
They are, in the same way that Passages, which I saw in Berlinale, has this also. Yeah, there are films that wouldn't be the same without like extraordinary central performances. Yeah, which I don't think. I think if bad, you need your actors to be good, but there are some films where it's more important that you have someone like Lea Seydoux and Melvil Poupaud who can and Pascal Gregory who just really stick in your mind throughout, and
you don't forget
really give it their all.
They're kind of like a tuning fork. Like you don't forget the sound that they make in a way, like in the film, which it's extraordinary film. I mean, I know we wanted to be tight on this one, but fun. Just watch it.
Go see it. Run, don't walk, or whatever people say. That's our recommendation for the week. I don't know when it's out, but it will.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, there are ways and means.
There are ways and means of sourcing this film. There always have been.
We're not going to tell you what they are, but
but get a hold of this. Put it as big as you can on your screen. It is an absolute joy. I can't really think of any major reservations.
I watch it again. I feel this is like an important film in a way.
It is.
This film.
It will be when we do our films of the year. I mean, I suppose it came out in Cannes last year, so it's a bit old now.
But there's certain films you watch and go, this film. You watch films for different reasons. At the moment I'm binging a lot of Per Portobello, and I think the reason is because I'm interested in Per Portobello. I'm not necessarily interested in the individual films themselves. I'm interested in the overall kind of effect and themes, right? But a film like this is like watching Tale of Autumn or Tale of Spring. It's like or The Green Ray. There are films that you watch for the particular emotional resonance they have. And I don't know, I just feel this film is doing something.
Exactly, it really hits a certain note, and it doesn't matter. Like it's like the twists and turns, the plot are fairly immaterial. You sort of know broadly where it's going.
It also has an insane ending. Like the way it ends is so good.
Oh, the Montmartre bit.
The Montmartre.
Did you like that bit? Actually, that was my one reservation.
Like the freeze frame.
Oh, I love a freeze frame.
I fucking love a freeze frame.
It's true.
It's just there's something true, there's a musical cue with the song "Love Will Remain" at the end, which is so kind of weirdly hackneyed, but works so well because it knows it's operating in that territory, and there's a little tiny element of like ballsy sentimentality to it. It's like, okay, here's this really emotional film, and I'm going to end it with a fucking corny as shit freeze frame and this really corny love song. And it's almost like a challenge in a way. It's like going, the film is wearing its heart on its sleeve in a way that's really compelling. And it's just so good. It's such a and the credits are rolling. You're like, maybe love will remain.
the music there is beautiful. I did actually think the Montmartre moment was a bit much, and it slightly lacked a punch compared with the rest. But I think maybe if I'm
jaded,
if I'm prepared for it next time, I will perhaps take pleasure in it. That was One Fine Morning, one fine film to be watching
by
this
Lea
cold spring.
Love.
Indeed. And also check out her other stuff. All Is Forgiven, fantastic film. Goodbye First Love, terrific film. Father My Children, I can highly recommend. Eden also is definitely worth seeing.
Is that the clubby one?
The clubby one, yeah.
The clubby one. Yeah.
She generally is terrific.
But she's not made like one of those, like she's not made like a obvious masterpiece yet.
I think this is it.
But it is in the long run, but she's not made, which is probably why it's good actually.
She's not struck out in a kind of in an epic way. But that's she's playing the long game, and people will realise when they start to see this corpus of work emerging, except for forgetting Bergman Island, which is a disaster.
Memory hold.
But when they start to see, well, now you've got All Is Forgiven. Now there's no fluke here. There's something she's really carved out. It's peerless. I love it. I can't wait for the next one.
Such a great film. I need to watch it again. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.